So I personally am a big fan of questions that have to do with averages. So it talks about the fact that the average distance last week for George was 52 miles per day. Now we know when we're talking about a week, it's 7 days. And the way you find an average is you add up all the miles in this specific scenario and divide by 7 to get the average miles per day. Well, we know the average miles per day is 52, and that was obtained in 7 days. The thing we don't know in that specific scenario is the total miles for those 7 days. So right away, what I would recommend is very much in line with our Triple T Math document, step 2 here. You don't know what to do to get the final answer right away, do something, because you really know more than you think you do. So think about the fact that, well, what's our goal? What do I know? And how do I get to the solution? So before I get too far here, I at least want to start working on this problem with the things that I do know. So this 52, I could put it over 1 to create a proportion and easily see that if I cross multiply, I could do 7 times 52, and I find that t is 364. Now, whenever I find a specific value, I want to be really clear on what I just obtained. I don't want to lose track of the problem. So what was that 364 what? Well, that's 364 miles in total, right? That's what we just found, the total miles for 7 days. Now, it then says, if the day he drove the longest distance were removed, that average distance ends up being 40 miles per day for those 6 days. Well, there's 2 ways I could actually approach this. I could say, well, let's figure out how many miles in total he drove in those 6 days in this scenario. So let's go ahead with that. I could cross multiply, use my calculator or not. I could just say 4 times 6 is 24, add a 0 at the end. So I know that that means he now traveled 240 miles in those 6 days. Well, we're trying to figure out what was that single day that we just removed. So what you could do from there is just subtract from the 364, which was still in our calculator. You could subtract 240 and we get 124. The other way you could have done it is once we had obtained the 364, we could have created a new equation and said, okay, if we take the total 364, subtract, let's call it the longest day, divided by 6 to find the average miles per day, which we know is 40. We could then cross multiply. And in doing so, let's say I add the L to the right side to make it positive, subtract the 240, you could see we end up getting the same thing, but this equation helps us to find it within this equation without having to find our partial answer and then subtract these two.